too. Okay, aloha, welcome back, Sister Street listeners. We are so excited to come back to you in black and white. Part of the journey with us is that you get to see how to utilize different facets of the online industry. And today, the Zoom filter has been changed to black and white. If you want to change this, go to your virtual backgrounds. And in the backgrounds, the backgrounds and effects, you can find on filters the black and white setting to make your viewing pleasure for others even more unique. So that's just a little piece of a fun tool that we decided.
Yes.
So it's your hosts, Mary Nunaley.
Hello.
And I'm Sharon Otaguro. So we are back with the entrepreneurship series, talking about the tools that you need to succeed. We've really been digging into your why identity, and now we're shifting to the tools that every business needs, regardless of your identity. What type of entrepreneur are you? How much do you utilize online? It doesn't matter. There are specific tools that you will need for every business. Mary, tell us a little bit more about what to expect in this episode.
Okay, sure, Sharon. So we're going to talk about the tools that you need to succeed. And when we talk about tools in this episode, we're also talking about sort of the legal stuff, the structural stuff. If you've ever worked for a larger company, you're probably not surprised by these things. But if you're an entrepreneur or a small business owner, you may be doing all of these things, but you still have to think about human resources, accounting, marketing, sales, operations, all of those things. And I know for myself, leaving corporate to come to start my own business, I was used to relying on other people to take care of those things for me. And I just managed my team and our directive. Step into that entrepreneur space, whether it's a side hustle or a full-time thing. Now you're in charge of everything. And so we're going to share with you some of those departments, for lack of a better term, things to look for, and where you might be able to go find help, because you may not be able or in a space where you need a full-on HR department, a full-on legal department, but you might need some support. So Sharon, let's get started.
Yes. Another point I want to make as we jump in, Mary, is that, it may be just you, right? If you're a solopreneur, then all of these quote unquote departments, the seats on the bus, the tools in your toolbox, however you want to talk about it, all these different roles might be you. And that's okay. What's important is that there's a identity and a goal for each of them, because you will look at things differently from those different perspectives. And so a tool that you might want to consider if you are a solopreneur as we're going through these departments is the 6 thinking hats. It's this concept where—
Oh my gosh, I love that.
It's the 6 thinking hats. And so there's a concept where you have 6 different baseball caps or hats or whatever type of style of headwear you like, and they have different colors to it. And those colors identify different roles or perspectives that you're looking at a situation or problem from. So like a blue hat is your logical hat. That might be your CFO or your human resource, right? And then the red hat would be more passionate. So you are coming at it from a creative aspect. And so thinking through these different roles in the similar vein helps you put on a different hat and look at the situation through that lens, versus trying to be the same person thinking of all the different things, because that's where you will not see nuances and perspectives where you might, if you're able to separate the role, the goal with those types of shifts.
I'm just laughing because I didn't think anyone else still remembered the 6 thinking hats, because that book came out in the mid 1980s. And it was one of the first books that I read on my managerial journey. And it has a prominent place on my bookshelf. I refer to it frequently. And it's like, holy cow, somebody else knows this book.
It was It was a concept that was embedded into one of the mentors that I follow. And I was like, oh my God, this is brilliant. So it's still alive
Uh-huh.
and well in the right.
You just never know. You just never know.
All right, guys. So let's jump in here. We want to talk about no matter what business you're in, no matter what size of your organization, you're going to need different aspects of your business to be successful as you're growing specifically, and then later as you're scaling. So, what are the basics? Well, Mary and I come from hospitality, as all of you guys know. So we think of it of how do we look at the leader, the team, and the customers in different aspects. To manage those three levels of business, you're going to need a person that manages people. So you're going to need a human resource department. That's pretty much the start of many businesses once you're going past a solopreneur, because you're going to have to hire someone else. You're going to have to understand what the legal aspects. HR has shifted where it used to just be the feel good. Let's human resource. Let's manage the resources of the humans and make them feel good and welcome and wanted. Now that's there. And also it's are we a legally compliant business with all the state, local, national, whatever regulations for managing other people and managing the business. So human resources is one. Mary, what's another one that's critical?
So to me, hand in hand with human resources is legal. And so again, you may not have to have an attorney, but you may want to find an attorney that you can have on retainer, or you may want to find an attorney that has legal templates available or something like Rocket Lawyer or something like that. Because you're going to need agreements with your clients. If you're a coach, if you're a speaker, if you're a course creator, you're going to need those kinds of agreements. If you work with subcontractors, you're going to need an employment agreement. You're probably going to need a non-disclosure agreement. You're going to, so there's all of these legal elements. And in some cases, they go hand in hand with HR. And in some cases, they're separate. But that's another important one. And then the second for me that's right up there is also your accountant or financial person, because your goal is to make money, but you want to make sure, because again, in the digital space, the laws are ever shifting in terms of what's taxable, what's not taxable. Does it depend on where I live? Does it depend on where it's sold? So having a good financial person to make sure that taxes are corrected properly, money is going in and out and recorded properly, you're paying the government properly, depending on your business structure. Are you taking out payroll taxes? Are you saving enough money so you don't get hit with a huge tax bill? So those are my big two.
Yep, love it. And that's perfect. That's exactly where I was thinking too, Mary. So when you are looking at starting off or coming back to your basics, it's important to know that you have that people management, even for yourself, right? Knowing that you have all the right legal documents, you filled out your W-2 or your I-9, whatever it is, and then the legal aspect coming then into the finances. Now, I like to add that there's two pieces to the finances. And so oftentimes I see this get conflated or combined for some entrepreneurs, because your person, your accountant that Mary mentioned, your controller, your CFO, you've got to analyze their background, because there are two aspects to the finances and the money that sometimes based on that person might come from one or the other angle. And what I mean by that is to keep the money. And those are the legal aspects. Make sure that you're paying your taxes, that you're managing your money properly, that you're not losing money by unexplained expenses, things like that. And then you got to have the separate perspective, that separate thinking hat, or that separate person for making money. So after your accountant, keep the money that you get in. How are you going to continuously grow? By making money. That's your director of sales or your sales thinking hat strategy. Not just keep, but also make. And ask your person and look at their behavior, whether it's yourself or your team member, and say, okay, are they constantly trying to bring in top line revenue, constantly trying to bring in new money, but not really looking and tracking and keeping track of the money that we've kept in? Or are they constantly trying to cut costs and save money, and they're not thinking of the bigger money opportunities? Because if
Mhm.
you don't have both aspects, Mary, you and I have both seen this, right?
Oh, yes.
The missing piece.
It is, and I've seen it happen at businesses that I've worked at too, where they're getting ready to make a sale or to sell the company, and Sharon and I have talked about one of the goals as a business owner is to sell the company, but to look good on paper, they'll cut a lot of corners so that they show a higher profit or their EBITDA is better or something like that. And then that new owner comes in, it's like, "Ooh, shocker, now I've got to spend all this money." So it is whether you plan to sell or not, look at that from that perspective, money coming in, money going out, and I can't say it enough, read profit first.
Read profit first, read profit first, read profit first. Yes.
So Sharon, what other department or task hat as a solopreneur do I need to put on?
Absolutely. So the top three positions that are ever hired when a new hotel is opened is going to be your general manager, so your general CEO as a solopreneur. You're going to have that director of finance. You're going to have that director of sales. What's next? Typically, it's going to be marketing. So sales and marketing also different from accounting and sales. Marketing and PR, both slightly different, but the role of those two departments or those two aspects is to get the message out there, get the right message out there, get coverage, right? Because once you've started to create this beautiful business, people have to know about it. So
Mhm.
the marketing is different from the sales closing of the business. It is to position yourself, to place yourself in the right places where that position matters, and to create the messaging and the storytelling that will differentiate you, will be top of mind for your customers, etc. So um, that's the fourth one that I think is important, is that marketing aspect. Mary, what do you think about that?
I agree. And the other part of that is whether, again, you're an entrepreneur, solopreneur, or you're starting a big physical brick and mortar, it already exists. Once you have those in place, the CEO or the general manager sets the overall vision and strategy. You've got your legal and financial, you've got your sales and marketing. And then the next one for me kind of goes hand in hand, and that's human resources and operations. Because now that you have customers coming in, people who have said, and I've opened hotels, I know Sharon's opened hotels, we're booking that business before the hotel opens, because on opening day, you need people in beds. You need butts in seats for a kind of crass way to say it, but you need people in the restaurant. You need people in the spa. So now that you've got that, HR and operations comes in, because now you have to hire people to take care of those customers, to take care of those guests. And operations are then responsible for that day to day. So as a small business owner, that might be subcontractors, that might be building your pool of talent that you can use for different projects. So
Yeah,
what do you think?
absolutely. And so I know that we've mentioned HR at the beginning, but then we shifted that HR person to the CEO person, because at the beginning, you're going to be both, right? And this is the perfect time, as Mary said, where it comes back, because now that you're starting to grow and you're starting to sell that business and you have customers, you're going to need additional manpower or willpower, if it's just you, to make sure that the operations are running smoothly. So the different aspects of that is going to be from the HR perspective. Are you managing your subcontractors or your work time blocks if it's just yourself, or your people if it's building your team properly? Is there communication aspects to that, human resources? And so this is where it's going to deviate based on your business and your complexity. But that's the next step, is looking at the operations and seeing where is that next position critical. And the one aspect of operations that I do think is one of the next steps is going to be that customer service aspect. So whether that's
Mhm.
you, or whether that's hiring a VA, or whether that's delegating this to your team, VA virtual assistant, as you guys have heard us say before. But now going into the customer aspects, and specifically, how are you creating loyalty? So is there customer aspects that you need to delegate or do that enhance loyalty and satisfaction. And the other aspect that often people miss, I think, Mary, and I'd love your opinion, is the problem resolution aspect.
Yes, no, I agree. It's so you want to build customer loyalty, and one way you build customer loyalty is resolving their problems or concerns when they happen. It is okay to apologize. And I also want to say that the customer isn't always right, even though that's something that we've heard. However, it is our goal in business to make sure that the customer's problem is resolved if it's possible. But again, the customer may not always be right. And that's why that you go back to that legal stuff too about here are the terms and conditions. Here's what to expect. Here's what I'm going to commit to doing. Here's what I expect from you. And so just because somebody doesn't read the terms and conditions doesn't mean that they're right. It just means they chose not to read those things. But I think, problem resolution and then customer retention are critical.
Love it. Yes. And then so here, go ahead and pause the recording, pause the show, and write down for yourself what in that operation is the most time dependent, is the most important. So start to list out in your business where those operational aspects you need additional perspective, additional focus, and mark that as a role or responsibility within your tool set, within your team set, within your department set.
I like that. And I think we've got an episode coming up on time management and bullet journaling and scheduling too. So for those of you that are going, I don't even know where to begin, that's okay. We're going to give you some other tools to add to your toolbox.
Excellent. So Mary, what's next? Are there any other specific roles or pieces that you think would be the next step on our department journey?
So we've already talked about the CEO. We've got finance, we've got sales and marketing, we've got human resources, we've got operations, which may break out into day-to-day operations, customer service, customer retention. And then I think the other part of it is, and this may go back to human resources, or it may be a role that you decide to create for your own team, is employee satisfaction. And especially as we are moving into more of a hybrid space, or a lot of entrepreneurs, solopreneurs are digital marketers, digital businesses with the team scattered around the world, is looking at what are those communication tools that you're going to use? What are those protocols that you're going to use? How do you keep everyone in touch, informed? And then also realizing that if you're working with somebody in Europe or the Philippines or India, either as a client or as a team member, how do you address those time differences? And, my workday may not be your workday, but I still need to find time to get in touch with you and have a conversation.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that job would be, but I think that that's a critical piece as the ever expanding digital world.
Yeah, great perspective, Mary, because we always want to consider it from different aspects, right? And so there is now the dynamics as your business grows of yourself, your team, your customer. And even if you're a solopreneur, that still applies. You still want to have a team retention strategy, meaning, do I want to do this business in a couple of years, right? You still want to have an exit plan of, okay, I want this team member, i.e. myself, to be able to sell the business at a certain point. I want them to be able to take a vacation at a certain point. And this is where we see some business owners and solopreneurs buy themselves into a new job because they wanted the freedom, but then they didn't create the structure. So having that team strategy, that team growth, and possibly that HR professional or that person to focus on that is really important as well.
Yeah. But to me, I think that those are the key positions, key roles, again, going back to the thinking hats, the key hats. And again, when you're first starting out, you may have to wear all the hats. It may be that you wear all the hats for a very long time and you're happy doing that. And you also still need outside support. Like I would be lost without my accountant. I would be lost without, some of my subcontractors because I can't do it all myself.
Yes. So those guys are, I agree, the same, the key areas and tools that you want in your toolbox. There is an element, of course, because we are Sister Street Online, that you may want to consider if you do a lot of your business online like we do, and that is the tech aspect as well, because this is another role where we should stay in our zone of genius. And unless our business is technology, most of us that are online entrepreneurs have this as a core department or core element that's needed. So, so that's one additional one that I think if you are an online business entrepreneur, that you should consider having that as a perspective, as a team member, because what I've found is, and Mary, I think I'd love your perspective. Actually, you might totally disagree with me, but what I found is I've had to take some steps back because I didn't have that strategy to begin with. And so I bought the wrong tool and I had to rebuild something, or I bought too many tools and I had to simplify, once again, rebuild. And so it just takes more time, effort, and you can't sell something if you're or create value within the business if you have this mishmash of different things, right? So I just got the recent advice that, just, random side story, that I was using my personal Canva account, let's say, for the business. Well, that's fine in certain ways, but the licensure actually doesn't cover if I translated those assets to a different aspect of my business. So you've got to think about it. And unless you're enmeshed in it day to day, that might be another thought department, etc. Mary, what do you think?
Yeah, well, and for us, because there are certain industry standard tools that we use in terms of building courses, that is not only a huge part of the budget, but it's also a huge part of thinking about, do we have the right equipment to run this software? Do we have the right licenses? So I have a personal and a business Canva account. We've got 2 storyline accounts. We've got, all of this technical software that we use to create courses. And we also then have to think through, like, what's our backup process? Do yes, we have hard drives, but if those hard drives fail, are we also backing up and not relying just on Google Drive? So we also use a third-party service that automatically backs up our computer every day. So if there is an equipment failure, we're not losing client work. And so redundancies, that is a key thing. And I think, Sharon, even though we haven't really discussed it, because that's just the way we roll, one of the tools that maybe we want to talk about in this series is also that tech stack.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were just having a conversation about on the mastermind yesterday. So absolutely, I think that's a great topic, and we may have some guest speakers in
That's
that.
what I was thinking. We could bring in a couple of tech guests, because like I'm speaking with one of my colleagues about, kind of building a mini server farm at my house to back up all of this stuff, because the things that we produce take up a lot of space, because we're doing video editing and that sort of thing. And so we got to have a solid backup and then redundancy and then still online. And that's thinking about disasters. And so that's the other piece of this with your tech, is you need to have a disaster plan in place. And we don't ever want to think about it, but what if there's a tornado? What if there's a flood? What if there's a fire? What if everything that you've done for your clients is on your machine in your office or in your home, and disaster strikes, how are you going to get that work back? So I know, not to be Debbie Downer, but we're black and white, and it's part of that. You got to think about that.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's a great reminder, because guess what, guys, this is our business, right? And so it gets a little confusing if it's a work from home business, if it's a side hustle, if it's a solopreneur. So now we're speaking specifically to you guys, because if you're working alone, you might not think through these business aspects of it, or if you have a small team, or if you're growing together. And so you want to think from, we're coming back to the CEO, the business creator piece. You want to think about what is the best case scenario and then double it, because it's probably a bigger possibility than you are considering. And then you want to think about the worst case scenario and then consider a big disaster, because we've seen this. There are e-commerce stores where you don't think that's going to be part of a divorce settlement, where you've got, a fire and you don't realize how much of your business is either physical on paper or digital that is on one hard drive without a backup, right? And a backup of the backup. So all of these facets you should consider, because this is a income and livelihood for you, and hopefully even more legacy in your future. So really, really good point, Mary. So we've talked about the different departments, and you sort of inferred this, but I want to take just a minute or two to jump into, okay, solopreneur, small team, large team, you mentioned it, but if it's not myself, then how are the ways that I might have people?
Oh, great question. So you might find people from platforms like Fiverr or Upwork. You might reach out to your network and say, hey, does anybody have this skill set? I've got a job. Would you be interested in being a subcontractor for me? Helping somebody start their side hustle. If you're to the point where you want or need permanent full-time employees, you may follow a more traditional route, running a help wanted ad, talking to your chamber of commerce. There's different ways that you can do that. And again, reaching out to your network. My business is growing. I'm looking for a full-time person that can do XYZ, or I'm looking for a part-time person that can do XYZ. And, I'm interviewing. So those are some of the ways that not only did we find work when we were first starting out, but now we use it as a method to find people to subcontract to work with us.
Excellent. Yes, perfect. So when you're thinking about building, after you've identified all these different departments, tools, and roles, as you grow, there can be creative ways that you grow your team. And that's exactly what Mary was sharing, was ways that you can subcontract short term. I've got one project I need help with. Then that you can create consistent contractors. Okay, now I have enough that I want to keep that subcontractor for the one project on as a retainer. Then okay, now I'm ready to hire. So you don't have to hire off the bat. Other ways to consider is, hey, I might want to collaborate. So Mary and I are in a collaboration where we are both investing our money, our time, and our efforts and our expertise into a business venture. So there are so many different facets. Each of those facets, you want to have a written agreement. You want to have a goal and outcome, because we love each other, but we're not sharing time and space just because we want to hang out. It's because we are building our business together, and there's a business goal and alignment, and there's an investment strategy, et cetera, et cetera. So understanding what your needs are, what your budget is, and then building step by step will help you to avoid unnecessary costs when it's too early, and be strategic as you're building so that you build a solid foundation to grow from, right? What do you think?
No, that's perfect. And as you were talking about that, the collaboration, it's also making sure that you have regular check-ins to make sure you're aligned. And because I have shiny object syndrome and random thoughts go through my head, going back to the accounting thing, we didn't mention this. When you're first starting out though, make sure that you have a separate business bank account and use that. And so many times, especially if it's a side hustle or you're just starting out, you just think, oh, I'll just weave everything together and that money is mine anyway. Have a separate bank account. Do not, if it's all possible, fund it from your personal bank account. I mean, again, when you're first starting out, you may have to, but make a clear transfer. And I am not an accountant. I am not a lawyer. I am just sharing from my own experiences, but you want to keep those separate. Just like Sharon was saying, personal Canva account versus a business Canva account. Same thing with your money, so that it's very clear. This is what says the business, and this is what is mine.
Yes, absolutely. And so as you continue to grow, that complexity is going to go higher. So you won't just need one finance person, right? That accountant that tracks your numbers. You're going to need a CPA or a CFO, right? That's going to project future. That's going to be a business partner and strategist with you. So as you grow, the complexity comes back. I think what Mary's saying is we're going to have an episode later on about business scaling that comes into these roles, not just, where we are in the apprenticeship series, but there's a mastery series that will also come into play. And so as you grow, it's good to know the the future in mind. And here's the thing, we're here, guys. So send us a message, an email at thesisterstreet.show and let us know where you are, because we can talk you through some of the aspects that you may need. So feel free to reach out to us so that we can support you. Put your comments in the chat so that the Ohana and the community is supporting you as well. But this is the overview and the pieces that I think we oftentimes see some people forget and not consider. So this will help save you time, money, and create that momentum that we hope will get you.
I love it.
Yeah.
And again, it's not something you're necessarily going to do on day one, but have a plan, have a strategy, and you're going to have some hiccups. You're going to have some times where you take a step back to take a step forward, and that's okay. But if you don't know, you don't know. And so our goal is to help you through our own journeys and what we've learned so that maybe you don't make some of the mistakes that we've made.
Exactly. All right, so as we close out the show, we're coming back from our black and white to the live, real time, everyday screen in Technicolor.
Woo!
We hope you've had a great time with us today. As always, please go to sisterstreet.show and subscribe. Follow us on Facebook and leave your comments in the chat. Send people to come and watch the show if this has served you and you know of someone that might need a little bit of review and reset on what roles, what departments, what tools might be needed. Mary, what's coming up in our next couple of episodes for everyone?
Gosh, well, we'll talk about tech stacks. We will talk some more about, I don't remember. Sharon, what are we talking about?
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
Stacks, and we're going to continue to dig into this toolkit, guys. This is the apprenticeship series, and we want to make sure that your toolbox is full of the right foundational elements. It's a Saturday morning, guys. So the right foundational elements as you're building your business. As we're wrapping up this piece, we've talked about it before, but Mary, I always love that minimum rate piece, because this is something that mission-driven, heart-centered, conscious business owner, however you label yourself, oftentimes we are givers. And Mary and I believe that givers gain, that you serving your customers is why you're in business. So if that's you, that's why you're on this show following us, right? At the same time, you've got to have your minimum rate. And underneath that minimum rate that you need to make sure that your security is good, that your family is being taken care of, outsource, right? That's part of this reason for this episode, is that you know what the roles are, you know where your zone of genius is, and you let go the pieces that take you triple the time and still don't do as well as the people who could be there supporting you in your journey.
That's it, because sometimes what somebody else can do at a higher rate in your mind, but if they can do it in an hour and it would take you 5, then in the long run, you've actually saved money because you're not taking that 5 hours to do something someone else could do better, faster, quicker. Exactly. This was great, Sharon. This was a wonderful episode. It's good to see you back in color, but I think that black and white was a real attention grabber. So we'll see what happens. Everyone, we'll catch you on the next show.
Bye, guys.